Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. We are thrilled to be presenting a 7-part series with our fantastic partner, Maze Row Wine Merchant. We are proud to present this series of interviews, diving deep into the heritage and legacy of Maze Row's excellent Italian producers. Tune in every Saturday from March 5th through to April 16th. As we take an intimate look at these respected historic producers and their role as part of the Maze Row family of luxury wines. And remember to check out our YouTube channel, Mama Jumbo Shrimp, for incredible video content featuring a visit to Argiano.
Hello and welcome. My name is John Irwin, and I am here with Maze Row Wine Merchant. We are an importer in the United States, world-class producers with an uncompromising devotion to craft, and we are honored to share the stories of our producers. And that's precisely what we'll do here today. Pietro Ratti of the Ratti Winery is with us, and I'm proud to say our history with Ratti dates back to 2014 when our importer began. The Ratti name is one of the most famous in Barolo. In the early 1960s, Renato Ratti returned to his native Piedmont after 10 years working in Cinzano in Brazil and France. And with regional knowledge but a global perspective, he purchased a small plot of land in the village of Morra and set up a makeshift winery in the abandoned 14th century Abbey dell'Annunziata. It was there in 1965 when he made his first cru wine called Marcinasco after a historical name for the region. And around that same time, Renato made the first map of the Barolo crus, effectively introducing the commercial idea of terroir to Italian wine. Renato passed away in 1988. His son, Pietro, who's with us today, took over the estate at just 20 years old and has been the winemaker for more than 30 years. And Pietro has continued his father's vision of elegant Morra Barolo, but has evolved the winery in fascinating ways. Pietro, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit about your family's heritage and the winery. So let's start with the obvious question. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. First of all, do you hear me? Yes?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, John, nice to hear you too. I'm doing well. We are just approaching in Italy, so we're almost getting our suitcases ready.
It's a pretty chaotic time. I have to stretch to do some laundry today myself, so I will see you there. I can't wait. Well, let's start from the beginning, if you don't mind. Can you talk a little bit about the history of your estate? And specifically what I'd love to hear is what Barolo was like in the 1960s and 70s. Of course, you weren't around for a lot of that, or you were very young, but I think the audience here would benefit from a historical perspective.
Yeah, was much more different than today. Of course, like any other region, probably wine region in the world. Barolo was an important region because Barolo was already famous wine. But of course, what happened in the last 50 years has been, it's a huge, big change. My father came from not a family of vintners because my grandfather was a veterinarian. My great-grandfather was a doctor. So he had he was raised with a different background, but he studied winemaking. And as you said in the introduction, yes, it's right. He went to Brazil, but while he was in Brazil making vermouth, he was always thinking about coming back. And of course, his dream was to make Barolo because he grew up here. So he knew, he went to school, the wine school in Alba. So, all his friends, some of them were making wine, Conterno, the Conternos, the family, so the Bruno Giacosa, So when he came back in 1965 after also visiting a couple of regions, in France, especially including, of course, Bordeaux and Burgundy, he realized that here was really the right place to make the change. He was a man who made a change in Barolo and, of course, Barbaresco, and then, of course, the Piemonte region back in that time. Again, influenced by regions of France where they were much more ahead at that time compared to here. Here was more a little bit behind, like Italy was behind in general. Other people in Tuscany, like including especially Piero Antinori or Incisa della Rocchetta with Sassicaia. So it was a time that was really the time of a change. Okay, people, they wanted to make a change, and they were waiting for leaders to play the role of leaders. And my father was the right person at the right time, at the right place. Okay, so he really became the leader of the change of Barolo.
What specifically is that change in your words? And specifically what I'm interested in is, I had mentioned that your father drew that first map of crus, and terroir is of course important, but stylistically, what was wine like in Barolo in the 1960s and 70s? And what was the style of wine that your father was making or interested in making?
The main change, of course, a big change that includes, again, it's not just Barolo, but follow also another wines in the rest of Italy. But of course, we talk about the most important regions of the wine regions in Italy, was the quality versus quantity. So back at the time, Barolo was just a name to put on the label. Okay, my father said, no, we don't have to put a name on the label. We need to make a wine that has to be the wine that worldwide, if we put this bottle of wine on a table, we can really compete to the best Bordeaux or Burgundy. So he really changed the style of winemaking, making more elegant quality in that way, starting from the vineyard, going to the bottle. So the bottle was really the technique. The technique he introduced was really to make more quality wine. With introduces also stainless steel tanks, temperature control fermentation, malolactic control. Okay, to have wines cleaner, elegant, more really with a different style compared to the time.
I think that piece is really interesting, and what I really find is so fascinating about it is this idea of modern Barolo, traditional Barolo. But at the time, that was not really something people were talking about so much. And what your father did was really bring just a cleaner style of winemaking, which has benefited all Barolo producers, regardless of how they may define themselves as sort of a Piemonte Pinot. One little factoid that I found really interesting, I've read this book, Pietro, I mentioned it to you, Barolo, Tar and Roses, which was published in 1990. And I believe, is this true that your father worked with Diego Conterno on those first bottlings of Marcinasco in his first couple of vintages?
Don't know who you refer to. No, I think he was really in those, that time was really, he worked here in the Abbey to make this wine. And as you are saying also, basically he was looking to the Barolo, not just a wine to wait for 30 years. Okay, so very over tannic, but a wine with more class, more elegancy, and also with the so wine with fresher, more flora, more wines that you could also appreciate a little bit younger than to wait, of course, for a long time. That was stylistically, and then of course, as you're saying, the biggest also. Improve was also the concept of single vineyards, which opened up a huge transformation of the whole perception of the Barolo and Barbaresco and all the Piemonte wines.
Yeah, there was a quote after your father passed away, I believe from Angelo Gaia, who said that the official recognition of the crus, if your father was still alive, would probably happen in about 5 years. But as it was, he was confident it would eventually happen, but I don't believe it happened until the 1990s. Is that accurate?
Yes, and then officially it was 2010 when the map of my father was recognized by the official appellation Barolo, with mapping the all single. Of course, the map was made by the all producers. Is much the MGA. Map is a much wider, includes all the different single vineyards, while my father only mentioned the historical top ones, and also he made, as you know, the first classification, because never forget that it's not just the ideally vineyards, but it's also to put like a really classification of quality, which is really the Burgundy, more the Burgundy style of categorizing the vineyards, like a Grand Cru and Premier Cru, which is a concept that even today, 50 years later, we are not, we don't even talk about, it's like, it's something that is very difficult in Italy to talk about, something that includes an idea of a objective classification.
Yeah, it's a charged topic. And you mentioning the map currently of the MGAs, or as you call them, megas, which is effectively the crus. There's no classification like Grand Cru and Premier Cru, just like you said. But your father famously did indicate which of the vineyards he felt like were Grand Cru vineyards. So they were vineyards like Canubi and Rocca dell'Annunziata. Your father, I believe, was the first to make a wine bottled and labeled Rocca dell'Annunziata, as well as the first to label a wine Conca in the early 1970s. Those today are your two single cru wines. Would you mind talking a little bit about Rocca dell'Annunziata and Conca, both historically and just quality-wise from a wine perspective?
Yes, these are two vineyards very different. I mean, if you have the chance to taste side by side, you really get the concept of cru, of single vineyard. So wines made quite in a similar way, because vinification is very, very gentle, so not impacting at all the style of wine. But the soil is slightly different. I mean, they're less than it's like 1 kilometer apart, and microclimate is different, and soil is slightly different, and the wines are very, very different, because Rocca dell'Annunziata is one of the most floral, elegant, refined, world class, high class type of typical Barolo from La Morra. So, very floral. Again, the nose is fantastic, more Burgundian style. And then Conca, which is a little vineyard down below the winery, but even the name, they reflect the style of wine. Rocca dell'Annunziata, Rocche is in Italian means a cliff, steep hill. So you have to understand that in the Rocche, a lot of erosion. So the soil is really pure, very, very pure and poor. So it gives this very, very gentle touch to the wine. And then Conca is the opposite. Like Conca means in Italian a conch, like a bowl. So we are at the bottom of the hill, and so the soil is a little richer. So we get a Barolo less floral, more dark. We say darker fruit, more black licorice. A little bit more concentrated. So it's really very fascinating. That made my father really so into the single vineyard, because when you make wine and you make wines that they by tasting when they are in an early stage, and they taste so different. It's a dream for a winemaker, to be able to have those wines so distinct and keep them distinct until the end, and bottle them separately, and the Nebbiolo, my father realized when he first, made it in 1965 Marcianasco, and then lately Conca and Rocca, he said, the Nebbiolo is a unique grape, and it's not the best way to keep them separately, because there are, very, very top, very good producers that they like to blend them. Even a blend is a very sophisticated way of approaching Nebbiolo. Nebbiolo is a very sophisticated grape, makes incredible high-class wines, and so anything you do, of course, in our style again is to keep them separately, but then again you can blend them, and it's really a unique. As a winemaker, I can only say I'm lucky, because we have this very, very challenging situation of making these wines and make them, and wines that in an early stage you can decide what to do, and then after they can age for so long, they keep developing in time in bottles. So I feel like a privilege really to make these type of wines in this place.
Yeah, it's astonishing. A beautiful place, amazing wines. So I talked about the two famous crus that you work with, Conca and Rocca dell'Annunziata, but I guess it's probably good for me to zoom out a little bit and talk about the commune that both of those crews or MGAs are located, which is the commune of Morra. Can you talk about the commune of Morra, which is where your bottling Marcinasco comes from, and how those Barolos may differ from other communes in the Barolo region?
Yes. First of all, the Barolo region, for people maybe they don't know, it's about 2,000 hectares of land, and it's 11 communes. So it's not just one village. It's 11 small, tiny villages. La Morra is the largest commune. 25% of the whole Barolo is made in La Morra. So what does it mean? It means that in La Morra there are a few subzones. We have, first of all, we have two sides. We have three sides of La Morra. One side is the valley that goes down from La Morra and faces Castiglione Falletto. So it's where it includes Annunziata, where I am located, and where Conca and Rocca d'Annunziata are located, the vineyards, and part of the Marcinasco, of course. And so the altitude, La Morra is also the highest peak. La Morra goes more than 500 meters altitude. So to give you where the winery is located, where these vineyards are located, is about 300 meters down. So we have it's really a unique slope with different hill. It's a hilly side, different. We call, like, to use the word Langhe, which means Langhe means in lingua, tongues, because of different tongues they make this unique view also from La Morra, from the peak. You see all these long hills going down, and the soil we have is classic blue soil. We have to remember that here it's all the soil here was the bottom of a sea. So it's a sea origin soil. So it was a deposit of the bottom of a sea. So it's a calcareous, salty. Our soil is more blue style, that makes the Barolo from La Morra more elegant. That's in general, that's the style of the Barolo from La Morra. More elegant, more approachable when it's young. At the same time, you can also keep it for many years, but that depends, of course, of the vintage, of the vinification, of many aspects, of course. But what makes the Barolo from La Morra different from, let's say, Monforte or Serralunga is really the soil that makes the wine here more elegant. In other communes, maybe more tannic or a little bit more tight, so that it takes a little bit more time to open up when the wines are young. And my winery is all my vineyards are in La Morra. So lately I also purchased some vineyard a little bit higher altitude. First of all, for to be ready for this a change of climate, so to have something also a little bit cool in cooler spots, and also to expand also in a direction of also working vineyards in other single vineyards.
So we've talked. I want to just touch on that really quickly. Can you tell us about that crew that you're working with now, that's new to the winery?
Yes, it's a new vineyard I purchased in 2018, but the first vintage on a single vineyard will be 2019. It's called Serra Denari. It's quite high. It's 450 meters, facing south, but compared to here, where all our vineyards in Annunziata, so Conca, let's say Conca and Rocca d'Annunziata, they are inside of this valley of that goes to Barolo. That one, the Serra Denari, is facing the mountains, so the other side, and it's fantastic. It's really beautiful. You have these we call the Piemonte Alps, really beautiful. They give a special breeze to here. To these vineyards, and the view is really beautiful. When I first went there, I didn't know the vineyard. When they offered this vineyard to me, I saw it. I said, "Wow, this is a place to live." I would move to live here, because the view on the mountains is spectacular. And this is a bowl, also amphitheater, that facing south with this looking the mountains again, and the soil is similar to down here, but the climate is different. So here we talk about microclimate because in 200 meters the climate is different. So the wine is different because of the climate rather than the soil. So very, very fascinating. So when I saw it, I say, yeah, I want to challenge to make also another single vineyard up to this level, and it's really very, very, very. It happened. I mean, I'm very, very happy. It's a wine compared to the vineyards down at 300 meters. It's a little bit more. It's a higher, cooler, so more nervous. Okay, elegant but nervous. Fantastic. Very, very, very. Very, very nice. I'm very, very happy to make the wine. Took again 1 year just to understand a little bit more the vineyard, and we are still learning about the vineyard because when you get a vineyard of Nebbiolo in our region already planted, of course, very good plantation, 30 years old and more, so fantastic, but still needs is for us some how you say experience to understand, because every vintner has his own approach to a vineyard. So you need to make the vineyard following what you want to get out of the vineyard. Okay, so it's very important to. It takes some time, a few 3-4 years just to adjust the vineyard. It's like a person, no? You have to to follow what you want to get from out of the vineyard. So and it's still. We're still working on that, and we get, but we're very, very happy about from the first vintage about the result.
I'm really excited to taste the wine. 2019 is when your first bottling is going to come out, and the wines I've had from Serra Denari have, like you said, a nervous energy to them, a tension or a spine, and I'm so excited to get a chance to taste that bottling. I think it's going to be incredible. We've talked about vineyards, we've talked about the region, we've talked about your father, and we've talked about his influence. What I'd like to do is talk specifically about you, actually. And I'm interested in that time period in the late 80s and early 90s. You were just 20 when you took over your father's estate. How did you manage that transition?
Transitions are never easy, but are always made by people. So in any situation, So for me, I have my cousin Massimo, Massimo Martinelli, worked with my father for many years. So he was really a good person to move the winery from my father to me. He was my partner and my cousin, and so it was a very good. Then I had a staff in the cellar, also very, very important because again, wineries are made by people. So you need to have a good. Staff to react, because when a very important person like my father, he passed away, was young but very energetic, so he was controlling everything. It's very important that you have the staff also not falling apart, to be all concerned about, and of course, the people that wanted to be to follow, to keep going, and the best way is to keep going what my father used to do. Of course, then by time you realize you adapt, techniques, you change. Wine is not something you make the same for 50 years. Of course, you maintain the inspiration. You maintain what represents for your family, the name of your winery, but then you need to adapt also to so many changes that you need to always to be open and ready also to adapt. So it's very, very important to be open for changes, and of course for me was not easy, I tell you the truth, at the beginning, because I was 20, I didn't want to work at 20, I wanted to have fun, but life sometimes is not like you are planning, and so they said to me, no, you must work, and I said, okay, let's. What does it mean, work? You have to work. Okay, let's try that, because I was trained to be a winemaker, but I was still young. I mean, I studied winemaking, but to study, my father wanted me to go to study in maybe UC Davis. He wanted me to expand a little bit the knowledge also or experience in other places. But anyway, life is you need to always to get what life offers to you. So I think I did well. I also try to keep always the winery in a good way, good position, and expanded when I could. I bought the first vineyard. I was 22 years old with some money my father left to me, and I went to my brother, I remember, and I said, "Ma," at the time he was staying in Milano, living in Milano. My brother was studying there. I said, "Ma, why we have to buy vineyards?" I said, "Ma, I think it's better to buy vineyards, Barolo vineyards now than later." And he said, no, I think you're crazy. I said, no. So from that time on, so I invested everything I got from my father. I invested every euro, at that time it was lira, into vineyards, because I thought that was the time to because also remember when my father passed away, we used to buy 80% of our grapes. That was very common. All the wineries in the region, they were like that. We were buying grapes from all our neighbors, and I said, but this is not the. I think something's gonna change. We need to buy more vineyards. And from that day going on, I'm still buying. I bought the last vineyard 2 days ago, so it's still a small piece. A small piece.
Can you talk about where that vineyard is?
No, but I buy all the time, but not in Barolo. I mean, Barolo is now untouchable. I bought some pieces around,
Sure.
I keep buying when there is I like land. I think at the end is always something that remains. So I don't buy houses, but I like to buy land anyway. So, and also I tell you also something more, that when my father passed away, also was a time of a big changes also in the Barolo zone, that my father, just when he passed, I didn't see really the big change that was happening, because was more in the 90s. He passed away in 88, and there was more the Barolo boys movement. So small barrels, big change. And I realized myself there was a time that we just needed, when you feel like you're not. I was too young for that movement. So I said, it's better if we keep it. We. I realized I couldn't play that in that moment, because also my father had also a very big personality. So I just said, it's better if we invest, buy vineyards, we prepare, and then it's going to be another, a better time later. So, and that was a smart move also to maintain our direction, and then to be able then later on also to expand more also our bottles, but also our labels, our image as well. So it was at that time I was not ready to play in that time. I felt like the time was to wait. Okay, so
yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
it was smart.
My impression is that when they talk about modern or traditional Barolo, which I think that argument is reductive these days anyway, but speaking of that Barolo boys moment, what has struck me about Ratti is there's always been a middle path with Ratti. There has been some traditional practices, but a fair bit of innovation, always with a mind towards better quality and more terroir. And I think that continues today, which is resulting in really, really fabulous wines, Pietro. You talked about transition. You talked about some of this vineyard land. I know Ratti today is 100% estate. When did the change in the Barolo go from buying wine to then being 100% estate fruit?
There was a progress, little by little. It takes a little bit of time, because you need to get more vineyards, and so. But I think already in the year 2000, we were almost all. 20 years ago, we were almost all, maybe we're all 100% estate Barolo Barolo growers. So it's not a big even if you buy grapes, it's not a big problem. If you buy, like for instance, Occhetti, my the Nebbiolo that we make, the Langhe Nebbiolo Occhetti. We don't have a lot of vineyards there. We predominantly buy grapes from growers that we've been buying since 1969. So, and it's fantastic like that. So if you have the right suppliers of grapes, that you've been working with them for a long time, and it goes well like that. They work like you want, and you help them. They help you. It works really well. For Barolo, it's a different story because we were able to have more vineyards here, and we focus on the Barolo. So, but even if you have good suppliers dedicated to the vineyards, they make grapes as you want. You can really get good grapes. Of course, you need to follow them, and because it's very, very important to follow what they do. But and there is still a lot of producers who buy top grapes in the area. It's very important to have reliable suppliers, and for a long and by time you really build up a very, very strong relationship. Of course, when my father passed away, again we were buying 80% of our grapes. Now we buy 20%. Again, mostly in the Nebbiolo, Occhetti, and the Barbera d'Asti, because I have also some suppliers around in Consorzio d'Asti. But that's and it works well like that.
Sure. Yeah, it's astonishing to think of buying grapes from the same suppliers for more than 50 years now. 2019 was your 50th anniversary vintage of the Langhe Nebbiolo. It's amazing.
And it's a nice story also behind the wine, because as you probably know, John, also we behind the wine, there was this very good. I always tell the story about the good friendship between my father and Bruno Giacosa, and Bruno at that time helped my father to find these families, the suppliers of grapes, and he said in the Roero land, the other side of the other Tanaro River. And my father was already making Barolo, and he was searching for grapes in that area, because he knew that you could make a Nebbiolo different from Barolo, a little bit more even lighter in a good way, that you could drink younger. And so he went to Bruno. Bruno said, Renato, I show you some very good vineyards with these families, and then there is only one thing, that they also make Arnese, and Bruno said, I buy Arnese from them, you buy Nebbiolo from them. We share, shake hands. And it's fantastic, because since then, we talk about 1969, we do the same. We don't buy, they buy now. Of course, Bruna now, not her father anymore, but they still buy Arnese from the same families that we buy Nebbiolo. And it's a fantastic story. So in 50 years, no contract, nothing, shake hands between friends, and it goes well like that. So it's a very nice story of how, relationships, and also, how this region is also made of nice stories, no?
Yeah, this tradition of fellowship that helps build the whole region. And something I think your father embodied, he was such an important ambassador for the region as a whole. But I'm so interested in the wines that you're making now and how those wines have changed over the decades. You mentioned in an article for Wine Spectator that you've taken a more empirical approach to winemaking. And I think that really shows, especially in recent vintages. Can you talk about how winemaking has changed for you over the decades, taking over at 20 years old, of course, but you've been the winemaker now for more than 30 years. What has changed in 30 years for you?
I think what changed is not me, and it's not the winemaking based on me, but it's based on what we have outside. And when I say this, means climate. Okay, so climate change it's not just a way to say something, but it's a real big change that we are following. And so as a winemaker, it's not just me, all my friends also, you need to adapt your vinification to what's happening outside. Okay, so if in the 90s was easy, okay, in the 80s the main problem was rain, so we had to adapt to the rain, no grass, taking the leaves away, trying to so it was really the fall was very challenging. Now is the opposite. We have the sun, so we need to try to we need to hide the grapes from the sun, and so it's a big challenging time. So, and it's changing through time. So you adapt your vinification. 2003 was probably the I would say the turning point. That was really the big challenging year. You remember it was super hot. We were totally unprepared. So we cooked our grapes under the sun all over Europe because we didn't know how to approach. Especially, I'm talking about the cool, the north earth latitude places. And after that, we realized that something was changing, and that was really a big change for us. It opened up our eyes. Of course, before we already have like 2000, we had the 97, we had 1990 already, but not at the level as a 2003. And starting from that time on, we started to realize we need to adapt our viticulture to this big change. And remember, winemaking is always following the what's happening in the vineyard. So it's always an adaptation. You need to adapt. I mean, to change the winemaking if something changes outside, because and that's the main that really what made me changing also this the vinification in the last years. And then I would say in the last really 10 years, maybe even 6 years, 7 years, since maybe 2015, really big change, big change. But in the last it's a progress. When you have to adapt, you don't make a big change in all of a sudden everything changes, because also you need to, it's an adaptation of what's changing, and it takes slowly, little steps to reach a point that you are really in a good way. But again, the most important adaptation again is or modification, or just is really the vineyard agronomic aspects of the vineyards more than the winery.
What are some of those things that you're doing in the vineyard that are helping with climate change?
Of course, you need, first of all, grass, a lot of grass. So we mow the grass. We keep the grass between rows. We leave more leaves to create almost like a kind of a hat or a cap. I know how you say, but to protect the grapes. We keep the grapes more inside the leaves, that before we used to expose more the grapes to the outside of the leaves. And lately we put these nets, which, let's say the truth, the nets they're born for, they're used for to protect from hail, which is our very big enemy for in the region. We can have these very, very serious hailstorms. But we put the nets also to protect from sun. So it's a very good to avoid the sunburns from direct light. And all those elements are all made to protect more and more the grapes, because at the end we want elegant, fresh wines. Okay, that's the characteristic of the wines from Piemonte. We are in the latitude where we can make, because of where we are, our climate, our soil, our grapes, we make incredible, fresh, elegant wines. And we cannot destroy this characteristic by this change of the climate change. So that's why we need to avoid to go into that, to change really the flavors, the style of wines only because it's too warm, too hot, or too dry. We need to adapt. So that's why we need to. That's the way we do, basically.
Yeah, speaking of elegant and fresh, I'm wondering if you can share a few notes on the 2018 vintage. That's what's current release of your Barolo. Can you tell us about the 2018 vintage, what people can expect from a style perspective with the wines?
Yes, 2018, it's interesting because very different from 2017. 2017 was more a hot vintage, warm vintage, but again, we handle it to make wines elegant. And when the wine is a more warm, you get wines a little bit more opulent, and the tannin a little bit hard, but still in elegant style. Then 2018 was a fresh vintage, so beautifully elegant and very extremely elegant vintage. For me, it's like a really vintage from the old days. I tasted some vintage from my father from the 80s, or, really very, very nice type of vintage. Very extremely elegant, fresh. Of course, it's not a vintage with a lot of power, so you're not looking for power, but you're looking for finesse. Again, elegancy. It's not a vintage with a lot of color in general. Of course, La Morra, we have less color than other villages, so if La Morra has less color, this is also a vintage with not a lot of color, but with an incredible balance. You really drink it like you can drink a bottle in one night, one person. It's very, very easy to drink, easy to like. It's already very well made now. How long it's gonna age, we don't know because it's always early to say. But I think the balance is gonna be a surprise. I'm sure it's gonna be a surprise in the long aging because it's really well balanced.
I loved the wine. I think it's ethereal, it's lifted, it's really beautiful, very, very pretty. So I think you're absolutely spot on. I think 2018 is going to perform better in the bottle maybe than people expect, but it is certainly a vintage that is really drinking well right now. So if you get a chance, please try those 2018s, especially from Lamora, especially from Ratti, because I find them to be incredibly elegant, Pietro. I mean, we use the word probably too much, but there's no better way to describe these wines. There's so much finesse.
There is only one problem of 18 is the quantity, because the production has been a small vintage in general. Even also 17, both 17 and 18, they've been quantity small because of the 17 because of the frost, 18 because of the spring very wet. So we lost a lot of crop because of the disease in the early stage of the summer. So in general, it's a small crop. So that's the only main problem of the vintage because of the quantity. But again, as you are saying, it's really a beauty type of vintage.
You talked about climate change and how you've changed some things in the cellar as well. How has your winemaking changed? Has it changed at all over the course of 30 years? I'm sure there's been some changes, but even recently, has anything changed to respond to what the land is giving you?
Yeah, big changes, because before we could play, but let's say if before was a little bit more not easier, but if you it's hard to explain, but let's say the climate was easier in a way that if we had something more let's say, remember that Nebbiolo first is a tannic grape, so you need to work the tannin, and that needs time. Okay, time in vinification, time in aging, time in bottle. And when you make a wine that spends a long time, especially in the cellar, of course you rack the wine, you move the wine. If before was easier to do that, no problem with air contact, now it's very, very challenging. So we try to make vinifications in general with reducing the exposed of the wine to oxygen. So using a lot of nitrogen to avoid that, almost not racking at all for 2 years in barrels. Very, very, we don't use new oak, mean, of course, sometimes we have some new barrels, but it's really because you need to rotate, of course, the barrels, but also very, very neutral. So aging is really a process to mature the tannin, but really in a very gentle way. So the big change is been made is that, really gentle touch in the way to express the vineyard as much as we can. Even vinification is very, skin contact, very long, temperature quite not too high, in order to have the fermentation maceration very, very long, which means 30 to 40 days of skin contact, which is a big change for Ratti. Before, we used to have less skin contact, let's say 10, 15 days skin contact. Now we are about 30 to 40 days, which with a submerged cap. Very fascinating technique. It gives a much more complexity to a wine. We lose maybe a little bit of color to the skins after all the time, but we gain in incredible finesse, elegancy, and especially complexity. And in that way, also the wine, when it's wine straight in barrels, and the wine again stays in barrels for 2 years, no racking. Then we put back the wine in tanks and we bottle it. So it's really a very, very gentle, soft touch. That's what I try to achieve to do, from the berry to the bottle, from the grape to the bottle, with no manipulation at all. Okay, so which means that every vintage is different, every wine is different, every vineyard is different, but that expresses really the unique of our terroir at the very, very high level.
Yeah, it's amazing to follow the wines over the years, and they've always maintained this consistency of elegance. But it's so fascinating to know that with that consistency actually comes a lot of change in order to respond to the environment around you. Pietro, I think we've had a lovely conversation, and I want to just close by saying that, of course, Ratti is a winery of incredible legacy, but also that profound consistency, that unending march towards elegance, that continuous process to respond to the land, the environment, and always bringing wines of finesse and those unmistakable flavors of earth, mint, flowers, licorice, and with time, even truffles. So I'll just close really quickly here with one note from a book that was released in 1990. It's a British book by an author by the name of Michael Garner called Barolo, Tar and Roses. And he talks about the last time he saw your father. And he says, in deference to the ceremony that must always surround fine wine, we chatted about Barolo while the wine had a chance to breathe. Forbidden alcohol by his doctors, Ratti drank in the wine through its perfumes. Smell those truffles, that licorice, the flowers, the mint. The old flame rekindled. It seemed almost as if he were discovering Barolo for the first time. Anyone who would suggest that Barolo is not capable of delicacy and subtlety cannot have tasted a mature Ratti wine from a great vintage. I think those words are as true now as they were then. Bravo on all of the work that you do. I'm sure 30 years in, it's just your life. But to us, the wines are truly magical, truly of a specific place. So thank you. We do have a couple questions from the audience, Pietro, that we'll close with here.
Yep.
Valentina was wondering, the Ratti wine is not currently imported to Russia, and she was wondering if you have any plans to start exporting to Russia.
Yeah, we have a couple of small customers in Russia. We don't sell a lot to Russia. It's not really a big, a very big market for us. So we have a couple of clients, yes, that we do sell. One in Moscow, and then but it's not a very big market compared to other markets. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Paul was asking, what vintage can a consumer experience a mature, complex Barolo? I asked this question with respect to collectors who want to taste classic Barolo now with bottle age. So, is there a specific vintage where you feel like maybe that kind of primary aromas of Barolo are starting to turn to primary and secondary aromas are starting to turn to tertiary, where you think there might be a balance? I know 2816 was a classic vintage, for example, but those wines are probably very long lived. I recently enjoyed a 2009, which I thought was absolutely beautiful. Are there any other vintages that you think that sort of capture the great complexity of Barolo?
Oh yeah, there are so many. But of course, the problem, as you are saying, you're right. I mean, 16, 15, there are still vintages that you can still wait. 13 as well, very classic, solid, firm, still wait. I would go maybe even 10. I would go maybe to 12, 11, vintages that they get now, 10 years of aging, so it's a good stage. And then I would go to maybe the one of the top that it's really, I think now, I mean, I talk about my Barolo, and then I don't know in general, but like 2000 now is perfect drinking, because I don't know how ago it was a warm, nice vintage. I tasted it recently. It's really very nice. That you can. It's not a vintage to wait. 99 maybe you can still wait, but of course it's also beautiful. So, but a wine. But remember this. Barolo is a very predictable wine. Okay, in the way that now we have 18, for instance, 4 years old. We know more, more floral. It's already developing, but it's beautiful now, of course. Then we move to let's say another 5 years time. So wine they have 10 years life. Then you start to get what you were saying, John. A little bit of tertiary aromas, and then you get a certain level of. So all wines are around 10 years. You get those, a good balance of youth and age. Then if you want to indulge yourself to a more aged wines, then you move to 15 or 20 years, and then you get more these, of course, the aroma, truffle, mushroom. You really can play on that. Of course, you need to adjust the food to those type of wines. But it's very predictable in stages, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and so on. Then the 30 years, of course, is a big, it's another challenge, it's another style of wine, of course. Then it can go even to 50 years. But in the first 20 years, you really can play based on what you want. But just remember that war vintage, they anticipate a little bit. Cool vintage, they postpone a little bit. Okay, that's the main difference from a warm to a so like 99 and 20, like 99 and 2000. 2000 is ready to drink. 99 is still young. 2001 maybe still or even 01 you can still wait. So that's always the way. But it's a very, very predictable wine. So if you like youth, stay in the last 18, 17, 16, 15. If you like a little bit of age, go to 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. If you want to have a little bit more, even more age, go to 2000, 1, 2000, 99, 98, 97.
Yeah. And just to wrap us up, I think it's important to note too that if a wine can age, that doesn't mean it's not delicious now. I really do like some of the current vintage. I like drinking Barolo on current vintage. I find the wines just as magical now as sometimes as they are in 10 or 15 years in some cases. But yeah, it's a wine of incredible length. And that legacy of your father of bringing that kind of cleanliness to the winemaking, that approachability in the early stages of the wine, it's really what I think has made Barolo such a massive success across the globe. It's an amazing legacy, but 30 years on, Pietro, you have left quite the legacy of your own. So thank you for spending the time with us today. Really appreciate it. It's always a wonderful conversation with you. And I know that I will see you next week in Verona.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of our new Maze Row Wine Merchants series that focuses on excellence, family, legacy, sincerity, and innovation. Tune in next Saturday for the next installment featuring another in-depth and intimate conversation with the heritage Italian wine producers that form the core of the Maze Row Italian wine family. To learn more about Maze Row Wine Merchant and today's featured producer, see our show notes and visit their websites. Don't forget to subscribe and like our show and tune in to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your pods. Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to italianwinepodcast.com.